Okay, this is going to be part 8 in our series on the reason for faith. We have said that faith is not an in case of emergency break class concept or option. It is to be a constancy. It is to be a way of life for the believer. Why? Because we are called to live by faith. We have said that the writer has provided us with a legal textbook definition for what faith is. Our base scripture is Hebrews 11:1. It says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." We have said that a better understanding of that verse is, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the validation of our faith being what has already been accomplished and even now is still being accomplished. And these things are not casually observed. What's not casually observed? The things that have already been done. The writer is not saying that you can't see what's been done. He's saying that there is a way to see it. Now, I want you to notice that I have made a substitution here. Instead of the word evidence, I'm using the word validation. And as we begin to break down the word evidence, it will become clear to you as to why I did that. Now, however, before we look at the word evidence, it is pertinent that we go back and take another look at creation itself. Why? The reason being is that in verse 3, the writer is explaining to us that there is a way that God built and designed the world to work. And one of those ways is by faith. God built and designed the world to function and operate by faith. So then, not only is creation itself foundational to our reason for faith, remember the psalmist said, "When I consider the heavens and the work of thy hands, what is man that you are mindful of him?" Creation serves as evidence. Creation testifies to the glory of God. Listen, but there is something that God did within the creation process that is analogous and essential to the process of faith. Something he did in the process of creation mirrors the process of building our faith in him. So we're going to take a look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. All right, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Notice that the universe is not God and God is not the universe. He is separate, distinct, transcendent, and even set apart from his creation. The word we are looking for is holy. The very first thing that the scriptures declare about the person and character of God is that he is holy. Remember, we are commanded to see. There is something to see. We are expected to see it. We are held accountable for understanding what we are seeing, and there is a cost to not seeing it. And when we read Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, the first thing that we should see is that God is holy. You can't help but see it. It jumps right off the page. Listen, it is his chief attribute, and it should not come as a surprise that that is the first thing that we see. It is the first thing that we should see and the first thing that we are expected to see. Much of the revelation that we have is unfolding, here a little, there a little, line upon line, precept upon precept. But notice the holiness of God is not something that the Bible gets around to. It declares it up front. We just have to understand what we are looking at. Listen, some might say, well, the first thing that I see is that he is creator. Yeah, but he is the holy creator. And then some might get philosophically deep and say something like, well, what I see is that he is eternal and self-existent. Yeah, but he is the holy, eternal, self-existent, sovereign one. Verse 3, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light." Notice that God does not create the light. He simply calls for it. The very first thing that we see God create in scriptures is time, not light. But that's a whole separate video for another time. We see God call for light. He just simply calls it. So then, very early in scripture, God reveals himself as the God who calls. And obviously, it is a holy call. Verse 7, And God saw the light that it was good. In other words, God spoke well of it. It found favor with him. In other words, God blessed the light. Listen, so then, very early in Scripture, God reveals himself as the God who blesses. Bear in mind that the call is the blessing. That God would call us out of darkness into light, into relationship with him and his son, that is the blessing. Listen, there are four things that come with the call that also make it a blessing. But that is another video for another time. If someone wants me to speak on that, leave a comment. Now, we have said that the purpose of light is twofold: to enable and empower us to see and to make other things manifest. Listen, when God calls for light, it's not so he could see what he's doing. It is so that others could see what he is doing. Also notice there is no sun. All right, verse 5. Here we go. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first of days. In the original language, it reads better as evening and morning were the first of days. Day one is the only day that reads like that. For example, day two simply says the second day or day two. It doesn't say the second of days. And so on with the rest of the days. Day one is the only one that reads differently. So then, day one is established as an ordinal number. In other words, it establishes order. It also tells us that the days of creation, they form a set. Although they are separate and distinct unto themselves, on one hand, on the other hand, each day is also part of a whole. They are part of a collective. And because they form a set, there is something that is common or shared between them. There is something called hereditary or transitive value, something that is passed on to each subsequent member, something that is passed on from day to day. So what do we see taking place? It is the establishment of more and more order coming into being. Listen, we are seeing more and more purpose being fulfilled with each passing day. So that at the end of each day, God pronounces it as good. But when he looks at it in its entirety, he sees the accomplishment of his purpose and he pronounces it as very good. Now, listen, we each have a first of days. We call it our birthday. We need to see the days of our lives as connected and not disjointed. The compartmentalizing of our lives is a Western mindset and it is demonic. It's not godly. It's not the way we are designed to live. There's a way that life was designed to be lived. That definitely is another video for another time. And it's called The Design of Life. If you want me to do that video, just leave a comment. Now, as believers, we should be able to look back over our lives and see God's hand throughout the entire time. We should be able to see more and more order and more purpose being fulfilled, so that at the end of our days, the Most High can look at them and say, it is good, it is good, it is good, it is very good. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Listen, God is at work in our lives, and we need to see that. And he is always at work. Now, here's what I really came to Genesis to actually say. Listen, how God moved in creation, it becomes a pattern for how he would later in turn move throughout the earth, throughout history, and in the lives of his people. We need to see the pattern. We'll pick this up in the next part.